What's up, everyone? Welcome to another episode of Backup Fantasy Sports. It is Thursday, August 25th. My name is Ewan, and today we will be breaking down the running back tiers for a fantasy football podcast. This is the third episode in this series that I'm doing where I go to Fantasy Pros, look at the ECR. Today's episode will be a little bit different. So for quarterbacks and tight ends. In previous episodes, I went and looked at the top 12 in ECR, broke them all down, what I liked, what I didn't like. But with running backs and wide receivers, there's just so many. So I've decided to do a tiers episode and put running backs into buckets and see where they all fall. It's mostly, admittedly, it's a exercise for me to kind of work out my feelings on all these running backs as one of the biggest couple of weekends and drafts comes along. Now this weekend, I've got my home league salary cap draft, which is going to be very exciting. And then the following weekend, there's a bunch of other leagues with friends and families going on over the Labor Day weekend. So trying to consistently keep up the content with fantasy football. I will be doing a podcast every week for that during the season, maybe two, haven't decided yet. But let's get into the running back tiers. There's been lots of ways to do this. Listen to lots of podcasts, do it every which way around the sun. But I'm just going to keep it simple and just go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I was going to do like Katy Perry songs, but then I just ended up listening to Katy Perry for 30 minutes and lost a lot of time on my prep. So tier 1, here we go. Christian McCaffrey and Jonathan Taylor. McCaffrey it's becoming quite a debate in the fantasy football community. Which of these guys should go number 1? Jonathan Taylor, safe, secure, hasn't been injured the last 2 years, but CMC has all of that upside, and he seems like the one that you go with if you're going risk it for the biscuit. Like, I want to finish first or finish last. It doesn't matter to me. Why are people thinking that about CMC? When he's healthy, he is the number 1 player in fantasy football, and it's not even close. In 2019, his last healthy season, he's pretty much 2 players in 1. So in 2019, his rushing alone would have made him RB12, and his receiving alone would have made him wide receiver 12. He's only played 10 games over the last 2 seasons. He was RB5 last year on a points per game basis. Right now, I'm trending towards him being my number 1 running back. I know health is a huge factor, but health is a huge factor for all of these running backs. It was on the Ringer Fantasy Football podcast yesterday. I think it was Craig Horlbeck said, all of the top running backs get injured because all of them get the most touches. So the risk factor for them to become injured is higher than all of these other running backs. That's just kind of how it goes. Totally agree. But Carolina could limit CMC a tiny bit. They don't have to run him totally into the ground, and he is still effective enough to get it done even with less touches. Jonathan Taylor, on the other hand, he's 3rd year, young, not injured. Everyone loves him. Last year, 1,800 yards, 18 touchdowns on the ground, 332 carries, 51 targets, 40 catches, and another 2 touchdowns through the air. He was the RB1, but he in PPR, he had the lowest total points for an RB1 since 2015, which was Devonta Freeman. So was last year just a bad year for running back? Possibly. I mean, they even had an extra game and he still finished with the lowest points total for an RB1 since 2015. So that is concerning. Was there a dip in the running back performance last year, or is that just where the position is trending? That's something we'll have to look at deeper as 17 game seasons come along. We'll just see where everything levels out. Good things for JT were 42 carries inside the 10-yard line. He led the league by 12 in that category. And last season, no quarterback looked towards running backs more in 2021 than Matt Ryan, 8.6 targets per game. Just so happens that Matt Ryan is JT's new quarterback for the 2022 season as the Colts look to upgrade from Carson Wentz. So McCaffrey, JT in tier 1. Don't think there's any debate about that. You might want to include some other players in there. I do not. So tier 2 for me is Austin Eckler, Dalvin Cook, Najee Harris, and Derrick Henry. These are the guys that I think you'll be super happy to have them during the season as your RB1 once the games start happening. But maybe like during the draft, you're a little apprehensive to put them on your team, spend that extra dollar for, just because they have a tiny question mark that's keeping them out of the tier 1 debate. For Eckler, at least for me, it's the touchdown regression hanging over his head. So he scored 12 rushing touchdowns last year. Phenomenal. Fantastic offense for the LA Chargers. Justin Herbert's on the rise. Mike Williams is locked up. Keenan Allen's as steady as they come at the wide receiver position. So that was great news for Eckler. 12 touchdowns on the ground in 2021. However, from 2017 to 2018, he had 9 touchdowns on the ground total. So it feels like regression is on the way for Austin Eckler. Can he prevent that? There's some new challengers in the backfield for Los Angeles. I don't think they're going to take significant work away from Eckler, but it could just be something to watch as the 12 rushing touchdowns does seem like an outlier. For Dalvin Cook, can't play a full season. It sucks. But he does play a lot of games. He's in a Vikings offense that everyone seems very hyped about. Last year, 1,100 yards, 249 carries, 6 touchdowns, 49 targets, 34 catches, 224 yards. Entering his 6th season in the NFL. Right now going as the RB6 off the board. These tiers, by the way, these are my rankings for tiers, but within the tier is not my ranking. So tier 2 here is Eckler, Cook, Harris, and Henry. That's not how I have them in my rankings. If I had them for this position, which I have not gotten to yet, I will readily admit. For Cook, it's just everyone's on the Justin Jefferson breakout. Kevin O'Connell. The hype is a little too much. Cook might be at the bottom of this tier for me. Just kind of a playing Jane. RB1. Like I was saying, in your draft, maybe you won't be as excited to have Dalvin Cook as your RB1. I could definitely see him slipping in a snake draft or going underpriced in a salary cap draft. But during the year, he's going to produce some fantastic performances, and you will be very happy to have the Viking as your RB1. As for Najee Harris, 2nd season last year, phenomenal rookie year with all the volume. 307 carries, 94 targets, 74 catches, 7 touchdowns on the ground, 3 through the air, over 1,600 total yards. What more could you want? Could want some more efficiency. It's tough to get super excited about the Steelers offense with Trubisky and Kenny Pickett under center. We don't really know what's going to go on there. The volume is king in fantasy football, so Harris definitely deserves to be in this 2nd tier, but he's already had a foot thing in training camp, and the coaches and him are already talking about taking him off the field a bit more. On June 8th, he was talking to the Pittsburgh Tribune Review. He said, "I am taking time off. I will not be on the field for certain plays. I do want to play a lot anytime I can, but at the same time, it's all about being smart." So if those touches go a tiny bit away, it sounds like he's just not going to be on the field for certain plays where he wouldn't be involved anyway. So it's tough to tell if if he's on the field less likely to touch the ball as much as he did. But if they just know that he's not getting the ball on that play, then sure, give him a rest. He's 2nd year workhorse. That's what Pittsburgh does. So while Harris is a very exciting workhorse back. There's just something in the back of my head with the Pittsburgh offense, like George Pickens, Chase Claypool, Pat Freiermuth, Deontay Johnson, Najee Harris. That's a lot of mouths to feed, especially in the passing game. So maybe Najee stays his floor as like a standard player, or in standard leagues, he keeps where he's at. But maybe in PPR, half PPR, he does take a little bit of a hit with all of those pass catching options for the black and gold. And last guy in this tier is Derrick Henry. He's a monster, but was 2021 sign of things to come with a foot injury? Or is he going to make us all look like idiots once again and just dominate this league? In 8 games last year, he was the RB1 in points per game. RB22 overall, despite only playing 8 games, 934 rushing yards, 219 carries, 10 touchdowns. And he did have his fair share of carries, 20 targets, 18 catches on 154 yards. I think I just said carries. I meant targets in the passing game. Henry is going to be, he seems like a major pivot point in the RB strategy for a lot of people. He could maybe fit into the same risk it for the biscuit with Christian McCaffrey, as you go all in with him. He's your RB1 and you kind of just ride or die and see if he stays healthy all year. He's likely to jump in to tier 1 with JT and Christian McCaffrey. And I definitely see the Titans basing their offense around him. They've lost A.J. Brown, Julio Jones, which is maybe not as much of a loss as it once was name-wise. Ryan Tannehill had his worst season as a Titan last year. They seem to be ready to kick him out the door this year, with Malik Willis backing up Ryan Tannehill. But if the Titans are going to do anything this year, they will still have to ride Derrick Henry, and that makes him a very exciting running back option. Moving on to tier 3 here, and this is maybe the tier that I'm most excited to draft out of, or pay up for in a salary cap draft. So we've got here Joe Mixon, DeAndre Swift, Aaron Jones, Saquon Barkley, and Alvin Kamara. This is where I want to get my RB1 from. If there is some way that I can get 2 of these guys, I will be jumping for joy doing backflips at 2 a.m. in the morning in my salary cap draft on Monday. They all have excellent upside, still some questions, so let's go through them here, starting with Joe Mixon. He's a workhorse back on an excellent offense, but can the Bengals support Mixon, Chase, and T. Higgins? They had a great Super Bowl run. They ended the year with some phenomenal shootouts against the Chiefs. Everyone remembers how insane Joe Burrow was at the end of the year. But is that actually sustainable? Can the Bengals stay that way? I don't think so. I actually love Joe Mixon this year. I have drafted him almost in every charity league that I have been a part of over the summer. I can't get enough of him. I think the Bengals' offensive line is better. I think with everyone paying attention to Chase and T. Higgins for an entire season, there's going to be a lot more running lanes for Joe Mixon. I'm all in. I think he is not going to be the one left out of the Cincinnati offense. I think he's going to get his. He had 13 touchdowns on the ground last year. I think that can happen again. 1,200 rushing yards, 292 carries. Love to see those carries go a little bit up, maybe crack that 300 mark. I guess that's less than 1 carry per game, or less than half a carry per game more, but it's better than nothing. And also 48 targets for 42 catches last year. That was great. DeAndre Swift is next with the Lions, and this is probably the guy who he's either going to be up 1 tier by the end of this season, or I think he's going to be 3 tiers down by the end of this season. He only belongs in this tier because it's PPR that we're talking about today. I think his rushing role is just too mixed with Jamal Williams, and he's obviously a phenomenal pass catcher out in the backfield. Last season, he had 62 catches on 78 targets for 452 yards and 2 touchdowns. He was the RB10 in points per game, RB15 overall. He missed 4 games. He had some injury issues around after Thanksgiving. I think he got injured right in the Thanksgiving game, but entering his 3rd season now, going as the RB8 in ADP. He belongs firmly in this tier 3 for this year, but like I was saying, there's a lot of variables with DeAndre Swift, and part of me, when investing in the running back position, I understand it's PPR, so the catches give upside, but I think Swift has the least secure rushing role out of all of these guys that I've talked about so far, and that does give me a little concern, because that's the running back is supposed to run the ball. It's that catching is just, it's a great bonus, but I feel like Swift's floor could collapse from under him, and that Lions offense, while getting a lot of hype, the Hard Knocks effect, I'm not there yet. I'm not ready to totally believe that Jared Goff, DeAndre Swift, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jameson Williams is about to take the NFC North by storm. But here is another NFC back that I am in on. It's Aaron Jones, once again being highly disrespected. Phenomenal player, still playing in a great offense. I don't care that, no. I do care that Davante Adams is gone, but you're playing next to Aaron Rodgers, still one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time, on the field, off the field. That's a whole other podcast to get into, but Aaron Jones, his targets are going to go up this year. I think that Packers offense is going to have to involve him a lot more. He's probably going to get more touchdowns around the goal line. Like Aaron Rodgers and Davante Adams had a phenomenal link around the goal line, and that's where Adams was getting fed. He's going to be in line for more targets. Our team's going to make it tougher to run the ball with Aaron Jones. Not sure. And he's got AJ Dillon. I'm still in on Aaron Jones. It's going to be interesting to see where he goes in drafts now that there's more public drafts coming along. When I was looking at the ADP last week, he was still going as RB11 inside the top 20 picks, which feels appropriate. Going into his 5th season, he was the RB11 overall last year after playing 15 games and collecting 10 touchdowns. Next up is Saquon Barkley. Outside of his rookie year and the end of year 2, it's kind of been tough for the first round pick. He's now the year after his ACL tear, so he should be back up to speed. He's looked pretty good in preseason. Sounds like he's been told to run the ball north-south rather than going for the home run every single time. And it should be the best offense that Saquon has ever played with. Very excited for him. If I could pair Saquon and Joe Mixon and not spend $100, that would be great. Would love that start. It would obviously affect how my wide receivers go, but that would just be a fantastic start. The home league I'm playing on Monday is a half PPR league, so it's going to be interesting to see where these workhorse backs go. We are switching up to 3 wide receivers this year in a flex, so you will need to save some extra money for those wide receivers. But we will see how that all shakes out. Very interested to see how me and 11 of high school college buddies all react to this kind of new format that we're introducing this year. So Barkley belongs in this tier as well for me. Despite having a couple of down years here, he's still got the upside of a top 5 running back. And then next up is Alvin Kamara. 13 games last year, he was the RB6 in points per game. When he was playing with Jameis Winston, or in Jameis Winston's 6 healthy games, Kamara was on pace for 1,100 yards rushing and 71 catches for 683 yards. A lot of people are talking about how he didn't have the targets and the catches last year, 67 targets, 47 catches, but he Jameis got hurt in week 7, and it was all downhill for the Saints from that point. I would love 2 of these guys in this tier, but I will certainly settle for 1. Tier 4 here, we've got Fournette, Javonte Adams, Nick Chubb, James Conner, Zeke Elliott, and David Montgomery. This is the tier where I'll be sad if they're my RB1, and then also I'll wonder if I could have spent my dollars more effectively if they are my RB2. They're okay. I don't really want any of these guys, but if they fell into my lap at a discount, I would happily take them. Fournette getting major bad vibes from the Bucs right now. Offensive line injuries. Brady was in camp, left camp. Now he's back. They got a new head coach. I'm ready to be proven wrong, but I only snag Fournette at a discount in a salary cap draft and probably in the late 3rd round right now of snake drafts for Javonte Adams. Denver keeps telling us that Melvin Gordon is going to be a part of this offense, but for some reason, people are refusing to listen. Feels like a situation where, Melvin Gordon will suffer a season-ending injury, and then everyone that's super in on Javonte Williams takes a victory lap because of the result of him becoming a top 5 running back. But it feels like having him higher than this is just bad process and hoping for a good result, whereas the Broncos keep telling us, Melvin Gordon, he's going to be part of the game plan. They went 50-50 last year exactly in carries. So I feel like we're just hoping that this is what's going to happen for Javonte Williams. And it's a little terrifying to take him over some of these more proven running backs after him and before him. His ADP is all over the place with people shooting for the upside and not really thinking about what could go wrong for the second-year running back. Nick Chubb here could be a tier lower if it's not PPR that you're playing in, but he's still a stud. Probably has the lowest floor in this tier because of Jacoby Brissett's going to be his quarterback for 11 games, so that's going to be incredibly tough to overcome. But if you can shore up the running back position, if you can if Nick Chubb is your RB1, you're sort of in that 0 RB range, but I think he's going to be possibly a late season winner once the Cleveland quarterback returns from his suspension. So it could be like a late season blossoming for Nick Chubb once Cleveland gets all of its players back on the field. So that'll be interesting to see how he go. I feel like people could be lowballing him after week 4, and if you have the running back depth to just snap up Nick Chubb from someone that's 1-2, 0-3, 1-3, or something like that, you can have this ace in the hole for when the fantasy playoffs come around. For James Conner here, stealing this from Matthew Barry's 100 Facts column over at Roto World or NBC Sports Edge. I think they're calling it both of those now. I will have to figure that out. The Arizona Cardinals have the second most goal-to-go rushing attempts over the last 2 seasons. Of running backs with at least 15 goal-to-go carries, Conner is second in the NFL with a 42.3% conversion rate. So good job by you, James Conner. You are getting the ball and you're getting it into the end zone. That is what fantasy managers want to hear. Bad news for James Conner. Through 9 games last season, when James Conner and Chase Edmonds were both healthy, Conner had 10 catches on 10 targets through 9 games. I'm not that good at math, but that's just over 1. Then Chase Edmonds got hurt. And then in his next 6 games, Conner caught 27 of 29 targets. So that put him on, just those 6 games put him on pace for 82 targets and 76 catches, which is a phenomenal catch rate. Let's not bank on that. But either way, it feels like he's either underrated, because if that's the role he's going to get, he needs to be up a tier, or he's overrated because if the Cardinals secondary backs come in and steal that catch work from Connor, then he's going to plummet down a tier or two just because of the rushing. With Kyler Murray here, Marquise Brown, it's, I don't know, just also kind of bad vibes around the Cardinals this season. Hopkins is suspended. Once he comes back, that's going to be another kind of red zone target for Murray to look at. But it feels like it's a make or break year for the Cardinals. They just signed Murray to this huge contract where they had the clause, just super strange, that whole situation. And I think Connor's kind of in the DeAndre Swift bucket here, where it's like he can either go up a tier or down a couple of tiers. Right now he's here, but what happens with his passing game role, like Swift's rushing game role, could determine how he does in the 2022 fantasy football season. For Zeke Elliott from the Dallas Cowboys, he is probably the running back out of this tier that I'm most excited to draft because he's so boring. He was elite at the beginning of 2021, and then he suffered a knee injury, and everyone seems to just gloss over that when they talk about how bad he was. Yes, Tony Pollard looks great, but I think the Cowboys are being told by the big guy upstairs, aka Jerry Jones, not God, to keep feeding Zeke the rock. He is getting that money. He's got that contract. Jerry Jones wants his value. I think Zeke is still going to get fed. The Cowboys, while they won't have as good of an offense, I still think they're going to score a ton of points, throw the ball. But yeah, out of this tier, Zeke is honestly the one I want the most. I feel the safest drafting him. Like Javonte Williams, weird. Fournette, Chubb, 2 down back only. James Conner, not good vibes about the Cardinals either. And then David Montgomery is just kind of a blah. Like, he keeps getting it done. I didn't really know where else to put David Montgomery in my tiers. He's a perfectly fine RB2, but he's exactly kind of what I was talking about. If I should I have put more of my David Montgomery money into a wide receiver 2 and just move down a couple of tiers to grab my RB2? I really don't want Montgomery as my RB1. Tier 5 here is kind of the unknown tier, as we have Breece Hall, Travis Etienne, Cam Akers, and J.K. Dobbins. Breece Hall's the rookie. I expect him to be closer to a workhorse than in a timeshare. Not like Najee Harris type workhorse, but certainly not in a Denver situation, while the Michael Carter truthers try to say that he should be looking out for the second year back from North Carolina. I think Breece Hall was drafted in the second round for a reason, and I think the Jets are going to feed him the ball quite consistently. For Travis Etienne, it's pretty much his rookie season, missed all of last year with a Lisfranc injury. He wasn't drafted by this coaching staff, so it's a little interesting to see where his role ends up. The talent jumped off the TV in college, no denying how good he can be. But I think this, like Breece Hall, will not be in a Denver situation. I think Etienne could be in a Denver situation, as we all kind of want to forget about James Robinson coming off his late season injury. But all the reports out training camp are that Robinson looks great. He's coming back. He's going to be healthy. And I think we're all kind of ready for Etienne to be an RB1, maybe in a DeAndre Swift type role. But James Robinson he has other things to say about that role. So I think Etienne is kind of risky. He's an upside RB2, but I would not be banking on him taking a massive leap as a workhorse back. Cam Akers here again with another injury. Incredible return from the Achilles, no denying that, but a bad playoff showing has people souring on him, as that is the last thing they saw from the third year back. He was about to be a low-end 1 heading into the 2021 draft season, people just hyping him up. He had such a great finish to the 2020 season, but now he's being treated as a back-end RB2. I'm going to buy the dip because he's part of this phenomenal and excellent Rams offense with Matthew Stafford, Cooper Kupp, Sean McVay at the helm. Everything looks good for Cam Akers, and I'm just not really buying the Darrell Henderson hype. I think Cam Akers, he came back after 5 months from an Achilles. He's had 8 more months to recover from that injury. So what is the problem? And then we have J.K. Dobbins, who's coming off the ACL. After the 2020 bye, Dobbins carried the ball at least 11 times in 8 of his final 9 games. He averaged 15 PPR points per game, good enough for RB15 on a points per game basis. He is coming off an ACL injury. I think that's going to take a few weeks to kind of get him back up to speed. And if you can cope, if you can piece together your running back room, find some RB2s, some PPR monsters that just get catches like a J.D. McKissick, perhaps, or a Nyheim Hines, if his role is to be believed in the Colts offense. I think you can get some good early season replacements and wait for J.K. Dobbins to work his way back into the Baltimore offense and possibly reach the high-end RB2 range this season. I'm not in on the RB1 talk for him, as the ACL is rough and he had quite a bad one last offseason. Tier 6 here is just 2 guys, A.J. Dillon and Tony Pollard. I don't think I need to explain this much. They are the backups that everyone wants to succeed and crush their predecessors. Tony Pollard has the entire backing of the fantasy football community to take over Zeke Elliott. Obviously, I do not believe that is going to happen. I think Zeke is going to have a great year. A.J. Dillon can be an RB2 even with Aaron Jones there. The more successful A.J. Dillon is, obviously, the less successful Aaron Jones will be. But they have 2 great weapons in the Green Bay backfield there, and I think they are going to utilize them both perfectly. Tier 7 here is kind of like a mixed bag. Kind of going to start going through these tiers a little bit faster as the episode goes along here. So tier 7, mixed bag. Josh Jacobs, Elijah Mitchell, Chase Edmonds, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Rashad Penny, Ramondre Stevenson, Miles Sanders, and Melvin Gordon. Maybe Melvin Gordon should be in tier 6 with those other running backs, but he's like the opposite of A.J. Dillon and Tony Pollard, where people want Dillon and Pollard to succeed and people want Melvin Gordon to get snapped like a Avenger by Thanos. For Josh Jacobs, early preseason overreaction when he was playing all of week 1 in the Hall of Fame game. Everyone was freaking out, just connecting all the dots about the McDaniels coming over from New England and playing multiple backs, and Josh Jacobs' role was going to be minimized. But I might go the other way. Like, this is probably going to be the best Raiders offense that they've seen in a long time. Devontae Adams, healthy Darren Waller, Derek Carr's getting all the hype. If Josh Jacobs just takes over that goal line role, we could be looking at double-digit touchdowns for the 4th year back. Elijah Mitchell, bad vibes again, already injured in training camp, going to be out until week 1 at least. Is 49ers hoping he'll be back by week 1. Always injured, RB20 in points per game, so not even that efficient when he is on the field. 207 carries, 5 touchdowns on the ground, doesn't get involved in the targets or the passing game all that much. And with Trey Lance around, the touchdowns could go down as well. Chase Edmonds in Miami, Mike, new head coach, coming over from San Francisco, so they could be involved with a several backs approach like they do in the Bay Area. But he got paid by Miami. They went out and got him, so I do feel good about Edmonds. But the problem with the running back position is that I want to say Edmonds is an RB3, but he's really kind of in the RB2 range, and that's where you start to get tricky. That's why the hero RB, the zero RB strategy, for me, it's hero RB seems attractive. I want to get one of those stud guys, maybe just one of the guys in tier 3. So I'm not sure if we're calling those studs. I would consider Alvin Kamara, Saquon Barkley, Aaron Jones, DeAndre Swift, and Joe Mixon studs. Some may not. So that's why I am just talking into a microphone and they are not. But with Chase Edmonds and Clyde and Rashad Penny, these are the guys that I would not mind having as my third running back off the bench. Or if I'm heavily investing in wide receiver, I don't mind them as RB2 either, but you got to know that you're going to have to shore up the position a little bit better than that with some more depth. Rashad Penny could be injured anytime you wake up in the morning, but while he's on the field, sounds like he's going to get a lot of work in Seattle, especially with Ken Walker already having hernia surgery and Pete Carroll saying that he's going to be ready for week 1, which probably means like week 6, because Pete Carroll thinks that everyone just gets healed magically overnight and timetables do not exist for injuries. With Ramondre Stevenson, I have him a tier above Damian Harris, because Damian Harris had double-digit touchdowns last year and was still not an RB1, which is not that great. He's not involved in the passing game. Sounds like Stevenson's going to get a lot of work in New England. Whenever the Patriots target the running backs, it's going to go to Stevenson. Then here with Miles Sanders and Melvin Gordon, like I was saying, Melvin Gordon, maybe he could have been in the tier above, but old guy syndrome, I guess, for him, he gets down here. And Miles Sanders, been a lot of reports out of camp that Kenneth Gainwell, Boston Scott are kind of going to be in the mix there to get some running back carries. So weird vibes around Miles Sanders, but he is also the guy that he had 0 touchdowns last year, so he could start scoring touchdowns and just jump up like 3 tiers here and be good to go and just be a touchdown machine in that Philadelphia offense with that great offensive line. Moving down to our last 2 tiers here. Tier 8 is Antonio Gibson, Damian Harris, Cordarrelle Patterson, and Devin Singletary. Gibson, once again, starting off a tier with just a bad vibes guy. Fumbles in preseason, getting work with special teams in practice. Brian Robinson is the starter. J.D. McKissick could take the passing game role. Gibson is the ultimate boomer bust, I think. It could be a lot of motivational tactics from Ron Rivera being like, you're not good enough to play football, blah, blah, and it just makes Gibson motivated and plays phenomenal. I keep saying phenomenal. I keep noticing that, but I'll have to look up a dictionary and figure out another way to describe players like that. Gibson is tough RB3 territory. He's kind of a perfect target if you're just going with 0 running back, just because he will... I think he's still going to have a couple of great games, and that Washington backfield is up for grabs, but his stock is just plummeting all the way down. Damian Harris, I already talked about. Really not excited about him in PPR at all. Better as a standard option. Cordarrelle Patterson with the Falcons is tough. I don't think they are going to be very good this year. They have their priorities on hopefully getting Desmond Ridder in the game eventually, and Drake London making that pairing, hopefully waiting for Calvin Ridley to return in 2023. And then Devin Singletary, he's the lead back in Buffalo as of right now, but his new teammate is 1 tier down here in tier 9. Still getting a part of the Buffalo offense is never a bad idea. And then the final tier for me today right now is tier 9 with Dameon Pierce, Ken Walker, James Cook, Nyheim Hines, and James Robinson. Dameon Pierce shooting up draft boards after he was held out of the second preseason game, and everyone is connecting the dots and anointing him the Texans starter. As a Texans fan, very excited. Probably going to go for too much in Monday's salary cap draft with about 4 or 5 other Texans fans, so that'll be great to see how high he goes. But it is still part of the Texans offense that's going to struggle. It's definitely going to be a bottom 10 offense in the league. Don't expect them to go a lot of places this year, but it is exciting to be able to snag a hopefully starting running back for one of the NFL teams this late in a draft or in a salary cap for this cheap. Ken Walker's had the hip surgery or the hernia surgery. So that's kind of pumped the brakes on his hype. He's a lot further away from Rashad Penny now in ADP than he was just a couple of weeks ago. James Cook, the pass catching back, Buffalo have made it known this year that they really want to pass the ball to the running backs more. They tried to sign J.D. McKissick. He got away, so then they just went out and got James Cook in the draft. That's what's worrying about Devin Singletary. But I don't think Cook is ready to take over the running the ball role that Singletary and Zach Moss currently occupy. Nyheim Hines keeps getting talked up. I feel like I could say this every year for the last 3 seasons, that he's going to get passing down the work, and he's going to be in that RB2 range in PPR if he does, but he could be a perfect target if you are going with J.K. Dobbins or maybe a Nick Chubb as one of your first 2 running backs, because he will get those targets. But it's not going to be super exciting, especially with Jonathan Taylor ahead of him. And then James Robinson here, Jacksonville. Great story, already coming back from that terrible injury at the end of last season, and he is getting all the hype. He was listed as RB1 on the Jags depth chart when they released it, and he could have a lot bigger role than we thought he would just a couple of months ago. So let's run through these tiers one last time here for the episode. Tier 1, Christian McCaffrey and Jonathan Taylor. Tier 2 is Austin Eckler, Dalvin Cook, Najee Harris, Derrick Henry. Tier 3, we've got Joe Mixon, DeAndre Swift, Aaron Jones, Saquon Barkley, Alvin Kamara. Tier 4 is Bad Vibes, Lenny Fournette, Javonte Williams in the timeshare, Nick Chubb with Jacoby Brissett. James Conner, how's his passing role going to go? And old man Zeke right now, who I love, and David Montgomery. Tier 5 is the unknowns with Breece Hall, Travis Etienne, Cam Akers, J.K. Dobbins. Tier 6 is the exciting backups with A.J. Dillon, Tony Pollard. Tier 7 is the black tier with Josh Jacobs, Elijah Mitchell, Chase Edmonds, Clyde, Rashad Penny, Ramondre Stevenson, Miles Sanders, and Melvin Gordon. Tier 8 is what am I going to do with these guys with Antonio Gibson, Damian Harris, Cordarrelle Patterson, Devin Singletary. Tier 9 is Damian Pierce, Ken Walker, James Cook, Nyheim Hines, and James Robinson. Whew, I need some water. That was a lot of talking, but I do appreciate you listening to this convoluted and kind of all over the place episode. I am planning to get the wide receiver episode out sometime in the next week. I was about to say which day I want to do it, but I do not want to commit myself to that because life can get crazy. But you can follow me on Twitter whenever I do post that episode. I will tweet it out there. So on Twitter, you can follow me at UIN or UOut, EUAN. You can like and subscribe this podcast, or like and subscribe to the podcast on Google, Spotify, Apple, Overcast, all those fun spots. This is part 3 of 4 where I kind of break down each fantasy football position. I've already done quarterbacks and tight ends. This is the running backs episode. So the final episode, wide receivers, will come out in the next week, along with one more episode of ADP risers and fallers before the season starts. Hopefully, if you have a draft this weekend, it all goes great. Hopefully, this sort of helped. It definitely helped me. I'm already realizing that I like some players more in one tier than I do the other tier. And that's going to play quite a role in how my drafts go over the weekend. But I hope everything goes well in your drafts, like I just said. And thanks for listening, and I will talk to you next time.